Marriage counselors of Reddit. What's the stupidest reason a couple has made an appointment? My anger management group facilitator told us a funny story about a couple that came in for counseling. The husband wanted to write a book. The wife said she would work and do everything around the house for a year while he worked on his book. So he quit work and wrote his book while she did everything. The book got published and was a hit. The publisher asked him to do a book signing tour. The wife was furious. She had supported him writing the book and she was done. They came to the appointment and explained the situation. The therapist asked the wife, "So what would it take for you to be okay with the book tour?" She said, "A trip to Hawaii with my sister." The husband was like, "Really? Done." The appointment was over in 5 minutes. Edit. Since a few have asked. He couldn't tell us the title of the book due to confidentiality. Husband. She forgets the laundry in the washer. Wife. Okay. But I'm busy. Maybe you could put the laundry in the dryer if you see it. Husband. Yeah. That's not my job. That was the least of their problems. I was a life coach for a bit before I realized it was more administrative work than I wanted to do. I wanted to help people, not fight inner organizational political fights. During my brief time, one of my clients was really struggling with the color of dog that her husband got for her. She wanted a specific breed of dog since she was a kid, and her husband did a bunch of research and got her one from a good line of the breed. But its coat was darker than the dog she imagined, and she was really struggling with it. We had a few sessions about expectations clouding your happiness, and it turns out the dog was the most explicit example of a much bigger issue she had in her life. But I had to seriously put my WTF on hold when she told me about the shade of her dog being a problem. My sister-in-law made an appointment for marriage counseling because her husband greeted their dog before her when coming home from work. Not a couples counselor, but someone who went to one once. My wife wanted us to go, but didn't actually bring up any of the issues that were bothering her. She let me talk about things that I knew about, but she'd been building up a list of things she resented for years and didn't mention a thing when we were actually there. She divorced me a year later and trotted out the list then. Not a counselor, but I remember my mom telling me about my parents going to marriage counseling. The root of everything was my dad felt unfulfilled in his life. He is a drummer and spent most of his life playing in bands. But he gave that up when my mom got pregnant with my sister. He still had a kit in the garage but barely ever played it. It took them 3 sessions to understand my dad just wanted to play in bands again, and he didn't know how to tell her because he thought she would be opposed. My mom loves live music and going out, and I have no idea why he thought she wouldn't approve. That was about 12 years ago, and my dad is now pursuing music full-time in a 3-piece instrumental progressive rock band with his best friends. And my mom is his biggest supporter. Before the pandemic they were both going out to his gigs multiple days a week. They have a whole new set of friends that they love, and they're happier than I've ever seen them. My specialty is children and families. But during the pandemic I was assigned whatever came in because it has been super busy. One lady called and spoke with me first about how her husband was horrible at communication and never listened to her. She asked for a couples session. As soon as she ambushed her husband with a "there is a therapist on the line that wants to speak with you," her husband screamed, "You called a therapist because I don't want to paint the house purple?" She wanted me to convince him to paint the house purple. And like any normal human who sees colors, he refused to listen to her. Reading some of these makes me wonder if counseling would have saved my marriage. Then again, I think actually wanting to save your marriage is a prerequisite for marriage counseling to be successful. My uncle and his wife. Reasoning. I mean, I get that it's a stupid argument, but how the do you lose a frying pan? Cupboard, hob, next to sink, into sink to soak, next to sink because other things need washing. Angry wife puts all the washing in the garden out of spite because husband never does the iron washing up and the kitchen is a iron mess. Raccoon steals frying pan. It's always the dishes. I don't see couples anymore because I cannot have one more conversation with adult human beings about the various philosophies of dishwashing. Couldn't decide on which chicken to buy for their chicken farm. A pimp and one of his ex workers scheduled a session to see me because they were having jealousy issues. They were legally married and he was unhappy with how she couldn't leave work at work. Best couple ever. Not a counselor, but my friend is one. And a couple came to her, unofficially, because the wife wouldn't tell her hubby when her mum was coming over because she knew he'd be sick or out that day. A buddy of mine was in therapy with his wife. She told me later that my friend, let's call him Gary, has a drinking problem. Me. Wait. What? Since when is Gary drinking? I never saw him drink alcohol. Huh? That's the problem. Oh Gary. I hope you are fine now. Edit. It seems like I worded it in a weird way. My ex-wife suggested we go to marriage counseling because she felt we needed to work on communication. I was slightly confused since we never really fought about anything and I didn't know that much was amiss. So I went with her and we had several sessions and it basically turned into just parenting classes since we didn't seem to have any issues to work on. Then one day she tells me she's is going to go sleep with a married couple she's been friends with for a week because that's the only thing that's going to make her happy. Would have been nice to know in marriage counseling that was the real issue she was wanting to work on since I had no idea she was struggling with her sexuality. Guess there really was a communication issue. My cousin went to counseling because her husband cuts the sandwich straight inside of diagonal. When I first heard it, I thought it was a joke. I'm a counselor with teenagers and kids. A school staff member dragged these two teens into my office one day. A boy and a girl. Both were clearly upset but definitely didn't want to talk about it with me. You could have cut the tension with a knife as they sat frozen in their chairs staring at the floor. I saw them and thought, oh, she's pregnant. I'm trying not to panic at how to handle the situation as I finally get them talking and it turns out they were just fighting because he sent a text to some girl. A text. At least she wasn't pregnant. Because naps. On weekends. I take a nap in the afternoon. Boyfriend was not okay with that and insisted I stop. I'll never forget the surreal feeling of his roommates watching me leave his house while he yelled at me. Nothing is really stupid in making the decision to come in for a couples session. But the most startling session I've had was when the couple had barely sat down and one of them informed the other that the relationship was over. Turned to me and said thank you for supporting, partner, through this and left the office. Edit. Thanks so much for all the positive response and for all the stories you've shared about going through this. As some have mentioned, it's absolutely reasonable to ask a therapist to help with a difficult breakup. And in this case the person who remained did become my client and successfully work through some tough material. In the interests of confidentiality I'm not going to share more details. I have to admit though, even as a professional I was totally shocked when it happened and had to work through my reaction live while focusing on supporting someone else. All part of being a therapist. My mum still talks about the Christmas where my dad didn't help her peel and prepare a bag of sprouts. They were divorced and he's dead and it still comes up from time to time. There was a couple who fought because the husband stopped liking cheese for some reason. Edit. No lactose intolerance. My ex made an app for us when he got his side girl pregnant. I was 26 and in grad school. Lonely. Stressed. And horribly gaslit. And went along. At the time the therapist would say if he hasn't changed by now he's not going to. Usually I'm trying to keep people together but I'm not sure I can now and I would get mad. Now I look back and things come on girl. Run. Edit to add. We broke up about 3-4 months later. It hurt unbelievably for a bit at first. But after some time, distraction, and actual effort to move forward coupled with a year of deciding to just be single, I am now doing phenomenally. It's so easy to want to keep something even if it's disgusting and poisonous. Because you don't see all the lying and cheating. You see the cute falling asleep together and hand holding. But staying is worse than leaving sometimes. Vaccinate their child. Dad say go. Mom says no. Go. Dad. Go. See dad go. Husband claimed Reddit said he wasn't the asshole. Esh. Husband shouldn't be seeking validation from outside sources. But wife is wrong to reject the judgment of unqualified internet experts. When my ex and I were having problems, she suggested marriage counseling. We went to a few sessions. I found out after the divorce she only went because she thought it would make her look better in the divorce. Indiana is a no-fault state, so all it did was cost me money. Not a counselor. But me and my ex had the biggest fight, known later as the spoon incident. We were both working over 60 hours a week and were stressed. Nonetheless, we had one night off together, so I made sure that I had cleaned the house and everything before she came home. She came back while I was unpacking the dishwasher and put the last cutlery in the drawers. When I finally put a spoon in the drawer, she said that's not where it's supposed to go. I asked her whether this is the way you want to treat me after I've cleaned the house and stuff. Never been so ed at a GF. Well, it was actually fairly meaningless. Cleans house. Mom comes home. Why is there a dog hair underneath the couch in the corner of the living room, completely out of sight and inaccessible to anyone? I don't specifically do marriage counseling, but I did do a couples session that seemed relevant for Reddit. The reason wasn't stupid and obviously impacted the relationship greatly. But it was silly how long it took to finally understand what was going on. At first they kept talking about the husband having a job and then another online job which kept him from spending quality time with his wife. It was difficult to understand because she didn't know how to describe it and he was being extremely vague. It slowly became clear to me that he was spending 3-4 hours a weekday and most of his weekends posting memes. This was time that he needed uninterrupted on top of his regular job, and it was driving her crazy. So, that was interesting. So I understand the ancient idea of two virgins marrying. But sometimes, man, guess what? Couple comes to me. Guy angry because his wife apparently wears a padded bra and uses makeup, and the wife is upset because he has a small dick but apparently acted as if he didn't. Big dick energy or whatever. The two were made for each other. Truly. I'll say this. As the male half of a 30s-something couple, there are no bad reasons to go to counseling. Sometimes, recognizing that you need help to get over a recurring argument is the most mature thing you can do. Example. My wife and I continually got into the same argument. About me being a homebody and wanting to leave social gatherings early. And her always wanting to stay until we are the last ones there. I felt like she never appreciated the fact that I was willing to put in 4-5 hours of social effort before wanting to leave. And she felt like I was always asking when we were going to leave. After having the same argument year in and year out, we took it to a counselor. We finally decided on a compromise that works for both of us. If it's her family friends get together, she gets to decide when we leave. If it's mine, then I get to decide when we leave. It's hard to separate frustration, anger, resentment type feelings from a discussion sometimes. And counselors can help with that, while also providing communication tips. Just my. Not a couples counselor, but my aunt is. She's been married 7 times and is a fairly popular marriage counselor. Blows my mind. Just popping in to remind everyone not to be shy to get marriage counseling, even if you think it might be too stupid based off this thread. Counselors get your money, and it's still their job to help you regardless. Got a friend who does marriage counseling. We were getting drunk one night after a long week and I noticed that he was hitting it a little too hard that evening. I asked him what was going on. He pretty much told me this. I spent the entire week with these two pod people. Not a single one of the pair expressed emotion during the counseling at all, and every session they just kept beating around the bush. I swear they were trying to with me. Finally, it's the end of the week and the last session of it. Thank you for your time, but there is no need to keep up the counseling now. He moved the table so it's parallel to the wall without me saying it. So the wife moved out in the middle of the night because the husband was incredibly verbally abusive. He, in turn, felt like I was siding with her and felt like he was traumatized because she left. I have a story exactly the opposite of the question. My great uncle lives in Montana and is a Vietnam War veteran who had a reputation for being fearless from the time he was a kid. Fast forward to 5 years ago and he got into an argument with his wife about God knows what. So she pulled out a kitchen knife and said, "I'm gonna stab you if you don't stop talking." So this loudmouth got stabbed in the chest a few inches from his heart. He was out of the hospital within a week, and when the police said they were taking her into custody for attempted murder, he said, "I'm not pressing charges. I'm going home with a damned honest woman and they're still living together and happily sleeping in the same bed." I had a guy friend whose now ex-wife dragged him to couples counseling because he was too nurturing and she wanted him to be more of a real man. She actually complained about how when her female friends sat around complaining about their husbands, she couldn't join in. Cause my friend wasn't an emotionally stunted man-child. Halfway through their first session, he told her he wanted a divorce and walked out. Lol. That was right after she'd been telling the therapist about how she'd known he wasn't an archetypal man's man when they got together, but that she'd always thought she could change him into a real man. Christ. She was insufferable. He's now with an absolute Amazon of a woman, whom we all adore. Not a counselor. My aunt and uncle do weekly visits because my aunt doesn't like that my uncle M Sturberts. They have been going for 3 years. And my uncle isn't gonna bunge IDK why he keeps paying money to a counselor who clearly isn't ever going to convince him to stop. Edit. I've been gilded. Pioneering for my first gold. Session 106. Husband walks in. Sits down. Nope. Still wanking. Now they have to fill up the hour. Maybe this is his kink. They got into a domestic because he wouldn't try her jam. We really need a context here though. I had a BF who gaslighted and psychologically tortured me for years. I remember how he never appreciated anything I did and I was never enough. One day I made a special bread for him which took me a whole day to make. He never tasted it. He said, "I'm sure it's." That was the last straw. Somehow I found the strength to leave him after that. But you can also look at our last moment and say she left him BC he didn't taste her bread. Not a therapist. But I'll never forget the time I went into a regularly scheduled couples appointment alone to tell our therapist that I broke up with my girlfriend the night before. She sighed and said, "Oh. Thank God. Now sit down and let's talk about how you can avoid that show in the future." He was gone too much at work. That is also the reason why she cheated on him 11 times with his brother. He insists Jar Jar is a Sith Lord and she just doesn't care. Couldn't decide to buy a dog or cat. There was a case in marriage laws in India where the husband complained to his wife that the food didn't have enough salt. The wife asked him to get the salt himself. The husband said, "If I have to do everything, why are you here? Go somewhere else and die." The next day his wife killed herself. The family of his wife came to complain but he asked them to go somewhere else and die. They sued him for abetment of suicide. But his lawyer pleaded that he asked the in-laws to die as well. But they didn't, the wife did, but it cannot be abatement. Court declared him not guilty and set a precedent that abuses and words said in passion are not abatement. Bananas. Full stop. Full stop. Someone bought the wrong amount of bananas. Guy I knew from an inbred part of the country. Everyone had the same last name. Went to a counselor to deal with the issue that his brother was screwing his girlfriend. She was their cousin. Counselor said nope. Too weird for me. And sent him on his way. I need advice from a marriage counselor. My husband keeps threatening to have me arrested for perjury and calling the cops if I question him or say he's lying. Your husband absolutely cannot have you arrested for perjury. You need to take an oath in court to tell the truth and then deliberately lie to commit perjury. Please seek out domestic violence resources in your city, state, county. You are being abused. Please be safe. Grandpa turned himself into a pickle. Didn't know how to decide whether to have salt and pepper or just salt or pepper on eggs. Not a counselor, but I did ask my counselor the same question. Her response: one time a couple decided to get divorced while sitting in my office because they disagreed on the better way to cook a hot dog. He was pro boil. She was pro grill. They could not find a suitable compromise, and that was the husband's final straw. Sounds like she is better off. How messed up is your life that you not only prefer boiling hot dog to literally any other way of cooking hot dogs? Not a counselor, but my ex-wife made an appointment because she felt like me hanging out with my family was wrong and I needed to stay home with her 24/7. I'm not a counselor, but I got a story of a co-worker going to counseling with his wife that falls into this category. So my co-worker is a huge gaming nerd and always has been. His wife loves Korean soaps and she watches them every day after getting off of work. So one day my co-worker and his wife are sitting on the couch and she's watching Korean soaps, which he absolutely hates. So he pulls out his Nintendo DS and starts playing a game. His wife loses it and starts talking about wanting a divorce, etc. So they go to counseling where she reveals to them that she considers Korean soaps to be their time as a couple and him not paying attention to them just shows he doesn't love her. Apparently the counselor sided with him and tried to mediate that they do an activity together for couples time they both enjoy, and allowing him to play games while she watches Korean soaps is okay. Nope. 3 counselors later he's still watching Korean soaps to keep her happy even though no counselor agreed with her. Not a counselor, but me and my missus had an argument once over how I wash my hands. Nevertheless, she must have been in a bad mood because now I do it like 20 times a day and she doesn't say anything. They were arguing over who got the TV remote. Most people who haven't been in long-term relationships don't realize that the stupid things that couples argue about are just the tip of the iceberg of a long train of complaints that the two have had about each other for many years. I've been with my wife for many years now. Actually more than half my 44-year life now. She complains about the dumb I do and I complain about the dumb she does. Sometimes we'll get caught in public complaining and arguing with each other about the dumbest things imaginable, like why do you park like that? Why did you put too much cream in my coffee? Why did you go left instead of right? Why did you say this instead of that? To an outsider, any one of these small arguments or disagreements look trivial and even stupid, which they probably are. But to the couple, it's a continuation of a long list of disagreements they've had for years. We have had stupider arguments. No, we have not. Yes, we have. If they are in counseling, no reason is too stupid to go. Hats off to those couples who do make the effort to go. What is bad are those counselors milking billable hours instead of helping resolve issues. As a former therapist, stupid reasons may bring them there. But you can bet that there is always a much more deep-rooted issue that you will be helping them work through. It's quite beautiful to see unfold. I think my favorite was a woman who married a man whose dad and brothers worked in a successful family business. Husband didn't work in the family business and didn't want to. Wife married him anyway, expecting him to be her meal ticket. I had a couple come in to discuss the problems they were having in their relationship. We sat down. I asked them, so what brings you in to see me? NSFW. Obligatory, not a counselor. This is a story from my college psychology professor. She was a psychiatrist. A married couple came in for marriage counseling. Turns out their marriage was falling apart because they were swingers. And the husband was ed off because at one of their events, another couple ate out the wife and she didn't invite him to join.